Greetings, Chummer, and welcome back to another RIT90s recap, this time for Season 2, Episode 14-16. Again, we lost a substantial amount of VOD, so hang in there as we kind of blast through the rest of these recaps. Starting with Season 2, Episode 14, A Gentle Breeze, Part 1. The scene opens with a memory of an old man draped in furs resting in a cave. He turns as someone approaches, surprised to see a new face. He addresses them and introduces himself as Sir Percival of Camelot. Sir Percival asks this newcomer if they're here to try and take the treasures from him that he's accumulated from his various adventures. Or maybe this person has come to take his place. He laughs and tells them to find his keys, take up his burden, and that maybe a rest would be nice after all this time, before challenging them to one last duel. While Arthur, Gawain, Mordred, Merlin, and Percy take some time to blow off steam in Land of Legends, Kay and Lance spend a couple hours digging into their own individual research. Kay, troubled by the binding runes found on the wolf victim, racks her brain over things that she had learned from her shamanic lodge about summoning and runes. From her training, she knows that those specific runes would have to have been applied at least 3 weeks prior to have some kind of magical effect that would bind a spirit. The more Kay runs those runes through her mind, the more confusion they bring over what it was exactly they were trying to keep in. The runes aren't just a binding, but rather some sort of all-purpose spirit cage, as if the person hosting the runes didn't know exactly what they were trying to bind. However, what was evident was that it was no ordinary, harmless spirit. Kay realizes that the force it would take to contain the spirit would have rendered her unconscious, or even worse on her best day. Meanwhile, Lance, with Mordred's comlink in hand, sits down in the lounge to slowly peel back the layers on all the information that he has missed since being trapped inside the Tetsubo. His first concern is that of the Knights of Camelot. Upon researching them, he learns that in this era, they are characters of fable and myth whose relevance in history is closer to fiction than fact. He pores over information about New Seattle and learns about the power of the corpse and what it means to be extraterritorial, among other things. He also searches for clarity on the advancement of modern medicine and gets drowned in a flood of information on BioWare and other enhancements. As Mordred and the party return, he also sends a furtive search about lycanthropy and learns of the dangers of metahuman virus variants. Almost as soon as the party regroups in the lounge, Gawain hears the hiss of the Valkyrie unit seal releasing and the weary voice of Dev, who has woken up from her medically induced coma. Her relief quickly gives way to panic as she realizes that everything is not the same physically as it was before. She can't feel her legs. Gawain rushes to her side, but she refuses his sympathy, and instead tries to hoist herself out of the module. In doing so, she collapses to the floor, pounding her unmoving legs in frustration. The party helps her to a sitting area, but she sends Gawain away. He turns to Merlin for answers, and she tells him that the Valkyrie unit can't repair something that isn't there. If a crucial piece of her nervous system was missing when Dev went into the healing pod, it's likely that the functionality of those nerves would be compromised after the Valkyrie unit made repairs with the materials it had. Arthur rallies the group in the kitchen away from Dev and suggests that it might be good to give her some space for a couple hours. Merlin presents a theory that the library Oberon told her about might be behind one of the magically sealed doors in the warehouse. Perhaps they could find a way to help Dev, as well as restore Kay and Merlin's magic inside. Percy notes that Servo is also expecting backup behind her door, and that they may be able to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The group agrees, and together Merlin and Percy use slip and shift to transport the party carefully into the warehouse. Once inside, Lance is struck with another memory. He recognizes this hallway as one of the 3 entrances into the keep at Camelot. The display cases are new, but the impressions of the weapons in the velvet are familiar to him, especially the one that is for the longsword, Excalibur. Another roar echoes from the open door, and Percy rushes to it, pausing at the threshold briefly while her compatriots gather their weapons, summon spirits, and prepare for what might be below. She calls out to Servo, who, for some reason, is no longer responding to her calls. After some investigating, they find that he has left gouges in the stone from his damaged leg. The tracks crisscross through the entryway into strange archways filled with a green mist. Percy is overcome with the same strange sense of longing as before and impulsively charges through an archway, leaving Arthur and the rest of the group behind. Arthur and Kay pause to examine the structure and the mist, wary that they may have found a place outside of the flow of time itself. Following Servo's footsteps and the strange noises of the beast itself, Percy continues through the dungeon and to another archway where she can hear Servo challenging the beast. She jumps through without turning back or even waiting for the group. Arthur, Gawain, Kay, Lance, Merlin, and Mordred trail behind, frustrated by her lack of communication. Encountering Servo, Percy hears the creature through the mist ahead, the sense of longing resolving itself for a moment before flooding over her again. Merlin manages to catch up to her just as she jumps through the next portal. Exasperated, Arthur finds Servo and asks him what is going on. He kneels before Arthur and tells of the dragon that lies ahead that he has dedicated himself to vanquishing in the name of the Neon Knights. The group lets the weight and danger of this revelation settle over them as Percy turns the corner to see a dark reptilian tail disappear beneath a metal grate and into the watery tunnel below. This brings us to Season 2, Episode 15, A Gentle Breeze Part 2. As Percy pauses before the metal grate that leads into the sewer system below, Gawain is temporarily overcome with the weight of Dev's predicament and a strange sense that something is following him. Mordred and Lance decide to accompany Gawain as he doubles back into the main hall of the warehouse. As they exit, Kay focuses on Gawain's astral signature, concerned that, during all of their strange encounters with spirits and bindings, something may have latched on to him. Around Gawain's form, Kay is able to see long, heavy chains that wrap around his arm and torso before trailing off into the ether. Kay is worried by this discovery, but centers herself and decides to tackle one mystery at a time. Meanwhile, Arthur takes a moment to confront Percy about her reckless behavior, and she hesitantly opens up about the premonition she received after encountering the elven poem underneath the Boblin Cave. Still in the labyrinth, Arthur, Kay, Merlin, Percy, and Servo find themselves on opposite ends of Sir Percival's dungeon. Following the sound of Kay's voice echoing through the archways, shrouded in green miasma, Arthur, Percy, and Merlin are eventually able to converge upon her location. Using clairvoyance, Kay scries on the different locations that manifest behind the doors as she turns the colored dial. During her search, she stumbles upon a sizable jail with multiple cells piled high with different kinds of bones. However, it seems that the dragon below also has control of the dial when the doors start to shift outside of Kay's influence. With Percy now intent on catching the dragon, the group decides to shift strategies, focusing instead on the sewer system that connects a large majority of the rooms in the dungeon. Pulling a donut from Lance's sack, Kay and Percy try to lure the beast out of the shadows. Kay once again uses clairvoyance, this time on the donut as she drops it down through the grate. Down below, she is able to see the dragon, which is smaller than she anticipated, who eagerly retrieves the donut with its long gecko-like tongue. A new plan forms, and Percy leads the group back into the forge where she saw the dragon disappear initially. Using the majority of the donuts from Lance's stash, Percy lines the floor from the grate to the door across the room with a trail of snacks to lure the beast out of hiding. The group, along with Servo, put all their strength into hefting open the large set of double doors on the far side of the room. Once this is done, Arthur and Percy retreat beyond the doors into a room covered in rugs and watch as Merlin prepares to drop another donut as bait. Meanwhile, Kay takes a moment to explore the forge and finds a set of long throwing knives that may have once belonged to Sir Kay of old. The group calls Kay inside right before Merlin releases the donut lure. Moments later, Merlin sees the glistening black reptilian snout of the dragon poking up through the gate and makes a hasty retreat. The creature, now revealed in the firelight from the forge, hesitantly crawls out of its hiding place and toward the trail of donuts. Positioned in the doorway, Kay gets low and begins to try and soothe the dragon in a similar fashion to how she communicates with Winry. Percy cautiously joins in as the beast closes the distance in an almost serpentine fashion. Arthur and Merlin watch from the next room as Kay shows Percy how to approach the dragon. In response, the dragon skitters across the room as soon as they get too close. Eventually, with Kay's guidance, the two are able to get within arm's reach of the creature. However, in one swift leap, the dragon tackles Percy into a pile of rugs, Kay holding onto its wings as it does. Taken aback by this sudden outburst, Arthur draws his sword. Arthur tries to intimidate the dragon, hoping to get it to release Percy and buy time for Kay to pull herself out from beneath it. However, Percy seems even more intent on befriending the creature. As it rolls over onto its back, she reaches out to pet its underbelly, a move that Kay would have advised against if she were not being smothered under a dragon. The dragon, not keen on having its belly rubbed, snaps at Percy, prompting Arthur to retaliate. Arthur's strike, however, does not meet its mark as the sword catches in the dragon's teeth. Eventually, Kay and Percy are able to calm the creature down and retrieve the now bent sword from its mouth. As the group settles down, the feeling of emptiness that was in the pit of Percy's stomach is replaced by a sense of wholeness and readiness. The dragon, which the party can now see is just a baby, curls up for a nap amongst a pile of rugs, an activity which Percy eagerly joins. While Merlin, Percy, and the dragon rest, Arthur and Kay decide to map out the rest of the dungeon. The two of them make it back to the bone-filled jail cell and note the presence of bones from different metahumans as well as Longhorn and a large serpent. As they sift through the ancient remains, Kay reflects on the emotional state of the group as well as Percy's out-of-character behavior. Arthur agrees and talks more about the emotionally taxing nature of the past week. They continue through the maze of misty doorways and find themselves at a set of spiral stairs leading down into darkness. A strange, guttural sound echoes up from the stone steps as the pair considers their next course of action. Sensing the group at the staircase, the dragon perks up and rushes down to their location. This brings us to Season 2, Episode 16, Next Level. While Arthur, Kay, Merlin, and Percy solved the labyrinth, Mordred and Lance accompanied Gawain back up to the main hall of the keep. Gawain explains that he has had this feeling that something has been stalking him in the shadows ever since he stepped foot in the astral realm. Mordred, now able to astrally perceive, focuses on Gawain's form and notices the same spectral chains coiling around his arms and chest. However, the chains aren't the only thing accompanying Gawain's astral form. Behind him looms the hulking form of a masked beast. The beast wears a tattered version of Gawain's clothes, has many quill-like protrusions across its back, and a mask composed of some kind of calcified material. Upon closer inspection, the quills are revealed to be dozens of large syringes. During Mordred's investigation, Lance examines the hall that he now remembers as one of the entrances to Camelot. He takes a moment to reflect on his newfound memories, remembering that the original Merlin had enchanted the doors of the keep long ago in order to magically provide access to fresh air, among other things. He also recalls details about Sir Percival, a tall human known colloquially as the Judge or the Warden, but known to his fellow knights as the Justice. While it was the knights' collective responsibility to maintain peace and order, it was Percival who was the long arm of the law. Lancelot remembers that King Arthur would send him and the other knights to capture creatures or criminals and bring them back to the labyrinthine dungeon known as the Viper's Pit. More important to Lance, however, were memories of an ancient, magical forge known as the Anvil. The Anvil was known to many as the forge that produced the sword from the stone, but to Lance, it was where he learned the art of forging weapons. Meanwhile, Merlin and Percy rush after the dragon towards Arthur and Kay's position. The dragon leaps ahead to block off the path down the spiral staircase, warning Kay of some unknown danger below. The group decides that it may be best to regroup before tackling any more physical altercations, and head back to the entrance to find the others. Back at the main hall, Gawain, Lance, and Mordred come face to face with Percy's dragon for the first time. Their reactions were understandably tinged with a knowing caution. However, Gawain was the first to warm up to the young dragon's playful and jovial nature. With the introductions out of the way, Lance makes it a point to investigate the forge, the party trailing behind. Upon entering, Mordred's sword turns blue as one of the forges flares up in a similar fashion. Lance explains that magical weapons created at the anvil all glow in proximity to the forge. With this knowledge fresh in their minds, the group is able to find a helm and a broken axe head that are also wreathed in that blue flame. With the party's curiosity sated temporarily, they all begin to head back to Meatspace in order to take care of some personal affairs. While exiting, Merlin has a noticeably harder time getting Gawain back out of Astral. Before returning with the dragon, Percy takes a moment alone to come up with a suitable name, settling on Zephyr after watching him glide across the hall like a gentle breeze. Back in Egg's lab, the Neon Knights meet back up with Boblin, who is surprisingly nonchalant about the sudden appearance of the baby dragon besides Percy. Arthur and Mordred express similar concerns about finding a safe place to keep him contained while they go about their business above ground in the coming days. Using his marks on Egg's computer, Mordred is able to gain access to a large sand-filled room that sits behind a large set of vault doors. After dealing with the security system, Arthur, Mordred, and Lance discover that this room is actually some sort of arena with gallery windows looking down on a circular sandy pit. After digging around a bit, Lance finds traces of blood and bones amongst the grains of sand, as well as a large trap door at the center of the room. Although there is a plethora of organic remains, Kay is unable to find anything currently living in the room, besides the party. Satisfied with their search, Percy releases Zephyr into the sand to play by himself, promising to return with food later. Together in the lounge, the party begins to discuss some personal goals that they hope to accomplish in the weeks to come. Namely, upgrading some gear, reinstalling cyberware, finding a doctor for Dev, and learning new skills, among other things. Gawain makes a call to a surgeon named Marcus, or The Fix. He says that he's unable to help, but is willing to give Gawain a referral to someone else in exchange for a sizable donation. Boblin suggests that the group needs help with their collective fashion sense and nominates Merlin to lead the task of acquiring new outfits for everyone. Percy notes that she has a relationship with a tailor named Hook and I, who might be able to set them up, and perhaps open up a door for the Neon Knights to access more vendors of a less than savory variety. Hook and I responds to her text immediately with a video call to review the state of the team's clothes and how much work he's in for. After a brief conversation, he tells the group to meet him at Mortimer's of London the next morning. With their plans forming and a meeting on the horizon, Percy takes a moment to check her comlink for messages from her dad. To her surprise, she finds another mildly concerning array of photos and videos, including a man that her dad had allegedly shoved into a barrel at the docks, a partially obscured video clip with the voice of her dad saying, "Going to find my daughter," and a selfie of him with 3 men wearing balaclavas with the text, "New whip, fire emoji." Nonplussed by this revelation, Percy grabs Gawain and shoots back a quick selfie in response. Tune in next episode to find out what happens next. And always remember, the birds work for the bourgeoisie.